What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Aftersound here, bringing you Splinterlands content every single day. We also stream right here on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday morning, so come by and say hello. All right, guys, there's an idea that's been floated around for a while, and, I've never gotten fully behind it, and I'm not going to do that today, but it's one of those things that I look at which is very similar to a lot of other ideas that have floated around and then slowly become reality over time. Because I do think that it will pick up steam at some point. It might not be now, it might not be this year, it might be next year or the year after, but that is the idea of an SPS halving. People have been talking about it. How do we extend distribution? How do we make sure that, there's enough runway in terms of the rewards for the DAO? How do we make it so that there's still value being provided to the game? And so this halving concept is something that has, continued to come up. So I think that's going to be something in our future. And I am here to tell you, at least at this point in time, it's not that I would be against it. I'm actually going to offer a slight tweak and alternative, but my thought on why a halving wouldn't work. Now, I've talked about this at length previously, with the usual idea being, it's not like people don't want SPS the same way that they want Bitcoin, for example, right? Which is where we're getting the idea from. Bitcoin goes through these 4-year halving cycles where we just cut the rewards and, everything's just gravy afterwards, right? You get the supply shock. But the truth is that the demand is still there and always there. There are die-hard folks who want to own Bitcoin for the very long haul, right? It's not about speculation. I mean, well, I guess ultimately it all does come down to speculation, but it's not about, there's nothing else tied to it except owning the most pristine asset in the world. And yes, I am a Bitcoin maxi for people who don't know, right? So anybody new to the channel or new to these videos, yes, that is the most pristine asset in the world. SPS is not, because the whims of the community can change the distribution just like that, right? We can print more if we wanted to. We can change how much is distributed. We can change how much is burned, right? So all of that stuff is subject to the whims of the community or a single person if they can get a large enough stake in the game. And that's why I've never been the biggest fan of proof of stake. But that's an aside, right? So all in all, in talking about why SPS, like an SPS halving wouldn't make sense, the other way that I want to tackle it, right? Because like I said, I talked about that. I talked about the fact that there's too much supply as it is. So halving wouldn't really solve the problems, right? Because it would just piss people off in terms of like reducing rewards. So we need to clean up the supply. But the truth is that we don't, and when I say we, like the collective player base, does not interact with the game and use SPS and interact with SPS the same way that people do with Bitcoin, right? Which again, that's the big daddy, right? The orange coin that everybody's trying to copy. And, obviously if we're trying to implement some kind of halving, it's going, people believe that something like that is going to cause a supply shock, but demand wouldn't change, right? But the truth of the matter is we receive SPS for playing the game. It is the reward token, actually not just for playing the game, it is the reward token for everything. Liquidity pools, for staking SPS, for node licenses. So therefore, people are just getting it for free. You can think of us as the miners, right, in many ways. So if we're the miners and SPS is Bitcoin, who's buying it, right? Because we are all, technically, if we're the miners, we are selling to cover our costs, right? And for most of us, a lot of this it's a game, right? So that we're not, unless people are really trying to min-max or people are coming in and renting and trying to cover their costs and rentals, you're not really doing that. You're probably still stacking for the long term, which I'm sure a lot of Bitcoin miners are as well. But my point is that the parallel is not perfect, right? The analogy is not going to be complete in that sense, because you don't have people just buying for the sake of it, right? People buying because they want to hold until, SPS goes to $1 million or whatever the case is. If anything, right? You would think that the flywheel impact of like burning SPS would make it even more desirable. We just don't have that kind of sentiment around it yet. The other part, and this is probably the biggest one that I believe would be detrimental, is the simple fact that if you were to cut rewards, it would actually make things, it would actually hurt sentiment a lot. Now, you could make the same argument that, hey, when you cut rewards and, in the Bitcoin halving, all of a sudden, like, it becomes way less profitable for miners, and therefore only the strongest miners survive, right? And maybe you could take that same approach with the community here, or the player base, and say, well, only the strongest and most, convicted players would stick around. But is that the kind of game we're trying to build? One that lives and dies on the whims of, a halving schedule or the crypto schedule, right? The crypto cycle. I don't think so. At least I wouldn't want that. I would want the game to be thriving no matter what the situation is, right? I don't care if it takes us forever to get SPS to go to the moon, as long as we're taking steps every day, bringing in new people every day, getting SPS to go up slowly and steadily because of the fact that we have cool things in the game that are worth buying and burning DEC for, that ultimately burn SPS, that makes it scarcer, makes it more desirable, right? Like that is the type of approach that I would love to take for a crypto-based game, right? Or just a game in general. So in looking at this, I think because of the fact that you would probably piss off a lot of players, and it would just be such a huge, not bump, but like just a huge dump to the sentiment, right? When it comes to like the fact that rewards would just be shattered, right? You'd have the rewards, and maybe for some folks it wouldn't matter if you're earning enough. That's totally fine. Maybe for at the bottom you don't really care about it, but I think that it would be too much, at least for in my opinion, for the game to really survive on a regular basis. So the thought process that I had for this moving forward, once the distribution phase ends, I want to give a shout out to the team, whoever designed the white paper, Aggie, Matt, or whoever else had their hands in the pie. I like the idea of a slowly but consistently reducing supply of rewards. So what do I mean by that? The way that the team had set it up, let's look at ranked rewards, for example. 7.5 million SPS over the course of 65 months, which reduces by 1% every month. So that does come down, right? That does come down on a percentage basis every month over the course of 65 months. Now, I don't know where we end up by the end of that 65th month, but I'm just going to throw out a number there, right? Instead of it being like, hey, let's reduce by 1%, because I think people, it's just easier with flat numbers. What if we were to get to a point where it's like, okay, once we're done with this distribution, what the DAO should prepare and allocate for ranked rewards is for the next 3 years or 5 years, take whatever SPS, take a chunk of the SPS and let's start at 4 or 5 million SPS, right, per month. Well, however much we get down to, let's say it's 5 million SPS. So on that 66th month, we're at 5 million SPS. Then the next month, it's going to be 4.9 million, 4.8 million, 4.6, 4.7, 4.6. So it's coming down linearly, right, at that point, which would be different from the percentage. But my point is that it would be coming down gradually, and therefore on a month-to-month basis, people wouldn't really notice it. But it would be making an impact because over time, people would be earning less, but the idea is that as we go through the course of a year, right, it goes down 1.2 million in terms of the delta. But the amount of things that the team might release, right, or promo cards or new sets or unbinding, whatever it is, would all come in and help to eat up all of the supply that's coming in. And then it gets replaced, right, as hopefully SPS goes up, but then doesn't come down as much because there's less SPS being given out, right? That is what I think we should be doing. I think there was a lot of wisdom in the way that white paper was written in terms of the distribution schedule over the 65 months, and I think we should continue that once we're done. I don't think it should be something where, all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's just cut everything in half after a certain point so that we can extend the runway. That to me just doesn't make as much sense. And before I recorded this video, the other idea I had was trying to think through like, okay, if we were to do a halving, when would that be? And maybe I'll save that for another video because I haven't found a good answer, right? So I'm going to continue to think about that. But at this point in time, it's like, okay, once we get probably within another 2 years from now, right? We'll be closing in on 5 years at that point. I would say that we need to have that conversation. And I think setting some kind of linear model for at least 2 to 3 years, right, that allows us to gradually take those steps down every month. And again, my numbers are funny, right? I'm not saying that 5 million is the right amount or that going down by 100,000 every month is the right amount. All I'm saying is that is a gradual reduction rather than like a knee-jerk halving is the better way to go, in my opinion, because that doesn't disrupt the player base, that doesn't disrupt earnings, it doesn't, discourage players. It happens slowly and steadily. It gives the team and the community time to adjust and buy new things, offer new things, maybe new games enter the ecosystem, right? There's a lot that can happen in that space rather than just making it this big halving event. So that is my pitch to you. that is my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll catch you all in the next one and see you around the game. Take care.